This episode is sponsored by Where the Well Things Are. Visit wherethewellthingsare.com to learn more about Belmont's student-run wellness shop located at 2006 Belmont Boulevard.
Welcome to the What If podcast. We're sharing an ever-growing collection of stories from the Belmont entrepreneur community to inspire you to start and keep going. I'm your host, Elizabeth Gortmaker. Here we go. Well, hey, Mark, it's so good to see you. Thank you for being on the podcast today.
Oh, Elizabeth, it's an honor to be here. And I've been watching your work with the entrepreneurship program at Belmont and celebrating so many people. And I'm just kind of honored to be a part of such great work that folks have done and all the businesses that have started and the impact in the world and just being able to be a part of this great network is an honor for me. And it's very encouraging. Thank you. Thank you for all you're doing.
Thank you, Mark. Well, I've been very inspired by Waterstep. I learned about you guys a few years ago, and it's just incredible the work you're doing. So I can't wait to share this story in today's episode. Let's go back to the beginning. So you were a management major. You graduated in 1985.
Yes,
is that
ma'am.
correct? And then you started Waterstep about a decade later. But take us back to that time. Tell us about your time at Belmont and tell us, what is Waterstep? What was the genesis of Waterstep?
Well, it actually kind of started at Belmont, really, to be honest with you. And Belmont was great for me. It's kind of funny. I started out trying to be an engineer at Tennessee Tech over in Cookeville, Tennessee. And after failing everything again and again and having a 0.7 average, I did decide that maybe I shouldn't be an engineer. I will say this, though, if you're ever in that situation, take skeet and trap shooting. You can get an A in that, and it'll bring a 0 right up to 0.7, and you can actually, be on the mark there, be able to get some sort of grade point average. But I came to Belmont after that, and I majored in business management, which was wonderful, and I had so many people influence in my life there, and I had a great experience. One of the turning point experiences in my life was that Belmont was supporting 3 students to go to West Africa, and one of the professors there encouraged me to be a part of that program, and so I applied just kind of on a whim. I didn't think I'd go, but I got approved, and so we went to West Africa. It's interesting for me. I'd never been out of the country. And I was stuck in this place in what was then Upper Volta and is now Burkina Faso. And my job, we got there, we were 5 hours from civilization. We drove out the next day, and this guy drove us to the middle of freaking nowhere. And we were at this nasty lake, big pond, if you will. And he said, we want to triple the size of this, and you need to build a dam to do that. So I'm like, okay, I don't know how to do that. So with a lot of rock, mixing concrete and rebar, I won't get into all those details. We figured it out with about 25 nationals, and it was the most challenging thing I've ever done. It really broke down everything I thought I knew about life. My faith is very important to me. Everything I had faith in or thought I did, it was just all ripped apart in that process. But the thing that got me about the what if was we saw people every day go to this mud hole and get nasty water for their children to drink. Their children were playing by cattle that were urinating and defecating. They were washing clothes, and they were sick a lot. And oftentimes people would die. At night there was a certain drum cadence that happened that was triggered, and we knew a child had died in one of the nearby communities that day. Waterborne illness. And so I started doing the math on some of that. We were able to finish the job and triple the size of the lake, which was amazing in preparation for rainy season. The rains had just kind of started when we left. It was exciting, but when I drove away, I couldn't figure out why can't these people in the middle of nowhere be able to manage their own safe water and be able to manage health better? And do you have to be a doctor, an engineer, or anything like that? It took many years for me to find an answer to that, and a lot of struggles. And I think a lot of that was just me being prepared to be able to be a part of an organization like Waterstep. But the simplicity of how we work is because of the experience Belmont gave me.
Wow. So, what does Waterstep do?
We have a lot of activity with people on the ground all over the world that are regular folks, just like you and me, and just like those people that hung out with many years ago in 1983 with the Belmont trip. Those folks are empowered by training that they can train others on equipment that's very simple to use. And we've begun to manufacture and develop our own equipment about 12 years ago. And that equipment uses a very simple process, most of it with electrolysis with salt and water and an electrical current to create a disinfectant to dose in water and make it safe. That process changed the planet in 1896 when it was actually discovered here in Louisville, Kentucky, by making water safe in every metropolitan area around the world. The thing that we do is, very simply, we take that process like it was done in 1896. We kind of box it up in a tool that's about the size of a North American football. We have other equipment that goes on, but our main equipment for safe water that I think about with that trip in West Africa for me is that piece of equipment with some tanks can provide 10,000 gallons of safe water a day with just salt and water and the tool and that electricity that it produces.
So you guys have the equipment, the technology, the tools, and then you deploy that around the world and you train people so that they can then manage that and deploy that even further throughout their communities.
Exactly, and they train others. And there's so many stories. I'll try to pick out one that's kind of fun and fresh that I like. We're real passionate about East Africa around Lake Victoria. I had a chance to go to Kenya years ago and be at Lake Victoria. It's a nasty lake. It's the largest lake in the world. And people around it are sick all the time. So one of the guys that works with us, again, he's a volunteer. He's got an incredible business that he started with a tool that we use that manufactures bleach, about the size of a curling iron. Very strong bleach can be made with salt and water. Again, that similar process. And he employs 400 mostly orphans and widows to be able to manufacture their own bleach with the tools that he has, and then they sell that at market. They're able to make the amount of money that a teacher at a school makes, which is a pretty decent living for an orphan or a widow mom. But he ended up at Lake Victoria and realized that along this strip of shoreline were fishermen that were sick all the time. And sometimes they couldn't even work. Well, they were drinking the water and their families were drinking the water. So what he did was each of these communities had a little base, and he's put a flagpole in, and that flagpole has a flag on it that says safe water is here, and so is disinfectant. So what he's done is be able to teach the fishermen how to teach this process, how to have access to that equipment that we're able to fund and supply, that they're getting healthier and they can work harder, their families are healthier and that kind of thing. But that's that multiplication process that we see a lot of. Those types of areas, we donate that equipment. But we also sell a lot of equipment to people that can afford it, or NGOs. There's some governments that have purchased from us as well, and that's how we one of the businesses that we use to keep Waterstep strong financially.
How many countries are you located in, and how many active projects do you have right now?
So we've been in almost 70 countries, over 65 countries now, and had kind of those partnerships with people around the world, whether that some of them is just creative, some of them may be their own nonprofit or NGO, and they're passionate about an area and they want to be able to provide safe water, which we do a great job. The way we work is you can just kind of insert that in the work that you're doing. And that's a pretty powerful thing. The number of live projects at any given time is over 100 probably at any given time. We love it when the projects morph into that sustainable structure of tagging and multiplying. Our equipment's very sustainable. It doesn't break, it doesn't wear out. So the projects are sustainable, but we like something bigger that makes a more of a regional impact.
Yeah. So for listeners here in the United States right now, I think it can be really hard to understand what it's like to not have access to clean water. Can you paint us a picture or describe to us some of the daily challenges that are impacted if you don't have clean water?
Sure can. Well, internationally, when you look at a lot of these places, they may have a water treatment plant in a town or a city, but by the time in some of these areas, the water lines aren't buried as deep as they are here for us. And so a lot of those lines are laid on the surface or near the surface, and those lines will crack and break, and it causes contaminants to get inside those water lines. So by the time they get to someone's home, the water's contaminated and can make you very sick. Then there's groups that are even in more rural situations, and like I was in Africa, those women are traveling an average of 6 miles a day to get safe water, and they are hauling that on their heads and their backs, and in their minds is they're bringing water back that's going to make their family sick, and will they be able to get through that sickness another day? We've come up with a neat tool, by the way, that's kind of fun called our water ball. You can find out more about that at waterstep.org, and that's a Dyson vacuum cleaner idea that you can roll the ball in front of you of water, and it holds 3 to 5 times the amount a woman could carry. But those are issues along with disinfectant needs that virtually no one can afford. So imagine COVID in the midst of some of these areas where you had waterborne illness problems, and then on top of that you have COVID. Well, how do I sanitize my world, my home? How can I keep these COVID germs away? And so sanitation is real important too. So the two go very hand in hand. Basically, Waterstep's about healthcare and safe water, disinfectant, learning how to use those effectively, all come together to create a healthier community.
Yeah. So I know on your website you talk a lot about the community model. So there's the 3 pieces of the community, the family, and then the individual. And you guys are working to affect each of those 3 areas. Can you walk us through your model and what does that mean, and how does Waterstep step in to help the community, the family, and the individual?
That's great. So one of the things that's most important is for this to help a community to survive, not only with health, but also with the potential for raising money to fund the community. And I'll go back to my buddy that was on the side of Lake Victoria, and he's helped all these folks be able to have bleach selling businesses. Well, that's great. So those individuals are making money. But what's happening is their families then are able to have safe water. They're able to have disinfectant also. And then by selling that in the community, the families that are purchasing that, they're able to dose the bleach in water to make it safe, or to have disinfectant, to use. You can even clean wounds with this disinfectant if you wanted to. So what happens is that builds up to the community level, that you've got people actually being able to not be so sick. They're able to work more. They're able to make money also, whether that's with their other jobs or make money with the equipment that we have. And so that strengthens the community itself. And, hope happens that way. I mean, when you can start at the ground level and people begin to imagine living a life where they feel better and they got an extra shilling or two to buy 2 bags of rice instead of 1. I mean, it's a game changer. And like we've seen it in so many areas, regions then are reached, and it just kind of expands itself. It's really, we've been doing this so long now we're able to look back and see tremendous change in areas where health has just magnified itself like never before.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I know you talk a little bit about the multiplier effect, and it's like the sustainability piece. And it's the brilliance of entrepreneurship, really. It's like coming in and providing something new that then can have these lasting impacts. And like the story you said of like, if you can go to work because you're not sick, and then you can make a little more money, and then you can employ people or provide a new product and people can afford it, and kids can
Right.
go to school because they're not sick. So then they have a better outcome later in life.
Right.
I read something else on your website about the World Health Organization, I think, said for every $1 invested in clean water, there's $4 that are then put out into the economy,
Yeah.
basically, that the economic factor, the economic effect of that. So tell me a little bit about this, or explain this to our listeners about how the impact of taking care of this very basic need of clean water, $1 invested towards that, has this multiplier effect.
Sure. That's awesome. It's kind of funny you said that. For Waterstep, we have a shoe business, which is another kind of entrepreneurial thing we do. We collect used shoes and we sell those to an exporter. And we say 3 pair of shoes will provide safe water for an individual for life. Cool. So
Wow.
it doesn't take much. And in a community, when you're thinking about using that word that you used also, the multiplier effect, I've got individuals and families that are healthier. So imagine the community being able to have more people, being able to have shops where I can have access to food or clothing, or be able to get things repaired, or able to buy, things as simple as tools to work with, or more complicated. The guy is never there to fix my car, those kinds of things. So it allows a community then to have more funding and more of that money being able to move from hand to hand to critical areas. Again, folks are healthier. And there was a fishing village, I'll tell you real quick, Elizabeth, in Costa Rica that I'll never forget. So we go in there and the people just were sick all the time. And the flies were awful. And what was happening is they were fishing and they would gut the fish right on the shore and pile them up. And the flies were like a fog. So we came in and we said, here's a plan. You got safe water. We're going to help you have safe water. And then you're going to have disinfectant. And then we're going to help you make these fly traps out of plastic bottles. And, we met with the leadership and said, what do y'all want? They said, we don't want it sick anymore. So, okay. And that's one of the things we always do is work with the group. And so here's some ideas they agreed upon. So 8 months later, we come back. The fly situation in there, they've changed the way they're cleaning the fish and preparing the fish. They're burying that. They've taken all the trash away, and there's kids playing soccer out in the street. And we met with the leadership and what's going on, and they said, it's amazing. We feel better. And so the whole level of that community has risen up. It's hard to imagine in the United States how unsafe water could impact a city at that level. But it's real. I mean, that's the real thing in some of these rural areas.
Yeah. So I know you guys are all throughout Africa. You just mentioned Costa Rica. Earlier, you said you're in over 60 countries, but give us a breakdown. Are you predominantly in Africa, South America? Are you spread out all across the globe?
It's kind of like, and I want to make sure that that people are always asking me, well, where are y'all going to go next? And it's like, well, we go where there's a passionate person that's got an investment or a plan that they want to implement, and that we want to come alongside and help that. So we never show up and just do something. And sometimes, like in the Philippines, we've done many disaster response actions. So in the Philippines, there's a big effort there because we went through a disaster there because we had some people we knew. But the fact of the matter is, I'll give you Ecuador as an example. So in Ecuador, we were there doing some disaster work years ago for an earthquake, but we've started working with one of their water companies, which is kind of crazy. And they came up with a way to use our chlorine generator that we never imagined that nobody had ever done before. And so they have outlying areas where they don't have service. So now they figured out a way to use our chlorinator to give them safe water in these rural areas. And so they're about to buy a ongoing monthly purchase of our equipment to implement in parts of the country because they've had these several years of great success models. Well, that's Ecuador. And so we're involved in Ecuador, and even the president of the country is excited about this. They've gotten his ear. So it just all depends. We do have quite a bit large amount of work in East and Central Africa. And a lot of that is because, again, of the relationships that we have. We got a new relationship with this huge organization in the Democratic Republic of Congo. It's one of the largest NGO healthcare networks on the continent of Africa. They've never done water or sanitation because they've never been able to imagine how to do that without this huge, complex thing. And so we've been able to help them understand how to just insert our training and technology, and they're very excited about that. So I don't know if I'm answering your question very well, but it's less about the countries and more about the people and the communities that we're able to help.
Yeah, and then the training so that you can then step away.
Yeah.
You don't have to be there forever.
No, and we're great at video training. We started that probably 8 or 9 years ago when COVID hit. Everybody's like, well, how'd it go during COVID? Did it hurt you? It's like, no, we just kept doing what we do. We position equipment, we train people, they have access to it, and we can train here anytime that we want to. And people are like, well, do you love traveling? And it's like, the bigger we grow, the less we go. And we save tons of money. Well, heck, who doesn't like to travel? But the fact of the matter is we want to build leadership and strength, and the best way is for them to do that in their own communities with their own culture.
Okay, so I think you've probably answered my next question, but you've now been running a nonprofit and growing it for 25, close to 30 years.
Yes, ma'am.
What's the secret to that longevity and how you have kept it growing?
I'm really not that smart. And that's nothing about Belmont. And I did pull my 0.7 average up when I got to Belmont. But it's all about building a team of people that are passionate and willing to get the job done. And I think the other thing is being patient enough to wait to see things through. I'm big on not wasting anything. And if I'd wasted that experience that Belmont gave me and not let those years kind of continue on until I was able to get an idea of what I was supposed to do, if I had just said, well, that was a great trip, that's good, I'm done with that, I would have lost so many opportunities. So I don't waste relationships. We don't at Waterstep. I don't waste opportunities. We may not have an answer right now, but we're always looking to see if we can go take something to the next step. And over the years, we've seen it again and again and again. You just don't waste, what's in front of you, because there's always something bigger going on around you, right? There's something bigger that's happening. And if you just make an assumption that this is what it is, you might be wrong. So we got a great team, and it's just realizing that the team is got to be loved on and encouraged all the time. And that's probably my biggest job, is to try to learn how to be a better and better cheerleader to the group. And I tell people a lot, I just get excited when the door's not locked when I get here in the mornings and they unlock me out yet, because the team that we have and a lot of work we do are volunteers. We're developing new technologies with volunteers and that kind of thing. And for a business that you can't pay people, that you get this much out of them, it's a pretty big thing for all of us to be strong leaders in it.
Yeah. What does your team look like? How many people do you have working with you? How many volunteers? What's the structure?
Yep. So we've got about 13 on staff here at Waterstep, and that's a mixture of full-time and part-time. We've got probably 30 to 40 people that manufacture our equipment, and they're all volunteers. Then we have literally hundreds of people that are out in the world using our equipment and helping other people to use that to be successful. We probably have a heartbeat of 50 or 60 folks in that group in other countries that are what I would call champions, and they're constantly building networks of new leaders. You couldn't give them, if we gave them 100 pieces of equipment today, they would use that. They would know where to put that, and they're having their own dreams and their own visions come out of that. But our job at Waterstep is here in Louisville. It's just to make sure everybody's got what they need. And if they come up with a problem, we call it Waterstep Nation, that everybody's kind of connected. A lot of times we'll have meetings where they're translated in different languages, kind of have a State of the Union talk every now and then, and everybody's sharing that information. I'll go back to the Ecuador group. They're writing up how they use this equipment that's never been used like this, so that everybody in Waterstep Nation can have that knowledge so that they can apply it other places.
This episode is sponsored by Where the Well Things Are. Offering an array of products ranging from healthy nourishment to insightful reads, Well Things provides customers with the resources needed to achieve a healthy lifestyle. Run by the Cone Center for Entrepreneurship, Well Things is a learning lab for 15 student leaders who manage every aspect of the business. To learn more, visit wherethewellthingsare.com.
Yeah. So take me back to the beginning, back to, 1995 and some of those early years. What were some of those initial challenges when you had this idea, you started to pursue this? What was that journey like for you at the beginning?
So my wife and I decided to take this leap without any money. So I was a youth minister, and we were trying to kind of work this idea and the youth ministry program together. And I'll never forget, we were at a retreat center in Gethsemane, Kentucky, and I was tying my shoes, and these drops were falling down on my shoes, and I looked up and she was crying and her tears were falling on my shoes. And she said, "We can't do this anymore." She said, "I believe that God's inviting us to do this thing. I think we need to do that, and I think we need to do that without any money." And so I'd been thinking about that. I hadn't said anything to her, but when she said that with such emotion, I was like, okay, let's give this a shot. And another thing I think you've got to figure out when you're doing this work of entrepreneurship is you've got to look at the little miracles that pop up. And that was a miracle moment for us. And then in about 2 months, we had $36,000 that just jumpstart the organization. And you're always wondering about the money, but then you're wondering about, how do you build an organization of people that you can do this with? And I just kept trying to bring folks around that could listen to the vision and the idea and that wanted to buy into that. And then how do you show them the evidence of what's happening? I had a guy tell me one time, he really stirred my world up. He's has a TV show about sharks, and he was visiting in town, and a friend of a friend brought him in, and he said, "Here's the deal, Mark." He said, "You're not in the water business." And I was like, "Well, I've not done a very good tour for you today, because we are in the water business. It's pretty damn obvious about that." And he said, "No, you're in the communication business." He said, "It's all about communicating what you do to inspire, other people around you." And so those early years were a constant attempt at trying to get people to see the evidence of what was happening and then what could be. And communicating the vision of the possibilities for the future at any level of entrepreneurship is probably our most important task or job, is that communicating that vision, because without it, nobody's gonna bite.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's huge. I'm curious about any cross-cultural challenges that you guys may have had or continue to have. Is that something that can be a barrier or a challenge for you guys? Since you are in so many different
Yep.
countries, I'm sure there's so many different political systems and cultural systems that you've got to work with.
It's huge. And again, going back to that we don't travel so much, it's great working with people that are in those cultures, and they are the leaders. They're the ones that bring this to, whether it's
Mhm.
we never brought this to the water company in Ecuador. That was brought by some Ecuadorians that we were involved in the earthquake with. So all that's important, and it's kind of funny. There's all sorts of stories that we have. We got stories of these ladies, and they were given safe water in their community, but they kept going to the river. Well, this was an organization that we saw do this. They never really talked about that, but the women said, we don't want to drink that water because it's taken away that time that we have with each other. So we're going to keep going to the river. Just so happens we're getting contaminated water. So you got to ask those questions. And then
Yeah.
a friend of mine, we worked, I can't remember what country it is, but I met him, and his mom was a part of the community. They put a safe water system in, and they put it up on this hill. And, you walk across the river where they got water and go up the hill. And so everybody was doing great and loving it. But his mom, she wouldn't do it. And he said, why aren't you doing that? And she said, well, I've always gotten water from the river. And why am I going to climb a hill when I can just go get the water right here? So the mindset and the cultural mess is huge. In the Dominican Republic, they don't like the taste of chlorine. So we've not been very successful there at all because chlorine is a big part of our process. And filtering the chlorine out, we can do, but it's another expense in rural areas that they don't want. So those cultural things have been huge. You mentioned politics and government stuff. In a lot of the areas that we work with, most of those political government groups really aren't interested in the folks that we're working with anyway. So we don't fight with regulations or anything like that. They really don't care what's going on in their lives. So that's rarely been any kind of thing to fight with.
What drives you, Mark? Like, what keeps you going and keeps you pursuing excellence and outreach so much day in, day out, nearly 30 years later?
So when I was in West Africa, there was a little boy that hung out every day with us forever, months. And so we had these mango trees we'd take breaks in all the time because it was so hot. And his name was Laban. And he'd come along, and he had a stick or a rock, and he'd always scrape the concrete and dirt off my legs. I just thought it was kind of weird, but it ended up kind of being cute, I guess. And I thought that he was just being nice. And we learned some words that we kind of said to each other, and we played games in the dirt. And, we took a lot of breaks because it was hot. And as I left that place, he's always stuck in my mind. His name was Laban. And as I look back on it years later, I realized that Laban wasn't necessarily being a nice boy. He was too small to help us with the project. He couldn't lift big rocks. He couldn't mix concrete by hand. He couldn't dig dirt, all those things, but he could clean my legs up. And I think what Laban was saying is, I need you to get in the game today. I need you back in the game because I know what it's like to lose a family member to unsafe water. I know what it's like to get up in the morning and want to kick my soccer ball made out of rags with my buddy, and then my buddy's sick or my buddy may have died. I know what it's like to be thirsty, and I know how important having a lake 3 times the size we got is for our community. And the thing that gets me going is, I guess, Elizabeth, without sounding too dramatic, I want to live today so that a child that didn't have unsafe water yesterday has it. And I want to live today that might make a difference 100 years from now. And so that's what kind of keeps me driven. and the people around me that I've been blessed that I'm around and that have chosen to be around, or I've chosen to be around them, they own the same thing. So we remind each other of that. And so that is a powerful motivator when things suck, and the day's tough and you're not knowing if you're going to make payroll next month, and somebody's done some poopy diaper thing to kind of, upset the apple cart, or you're frustrated about something that's, happened half a world away that you can't control. You got to have those little nuggets that you hold on to and you cling to in this work, because being an entrepreneur is pretty darn lonely, because you're laying it all out on the line, and you got to make sure you've got stuff stored up in you to remind you what's important and why you're doing this.
Wow. Do you have any idea the impact that Waterstep has had? I mean, I know you know how many countries and how many projects, but have you been able to measure how many people or gallons, or
Yeah,
to understand?
we try to do that. I think, and I'm learning a lot about data. Maybe I tried to learn about data at Tennessee Tech University when I was trying to be an engineer, so maybe I failed that. But we're learning a lot about how to explain data better and differently in terms of gallons of water provided, and how you can have things that are measurable, because we talk about impact of people, and we say we've impacted over 7 million people. But what does that look like? And so we're trying to understand that in my heart, I guess, and in our chats around the conference table here. The impact is about what you asked me about. What we're talking about is can a community be healthier? Can people make money, and can it sustain a community better? And those things are happening. But I guess I'm not. I'm a storyteller and I'm a story listener, and so for me, it's hearing those stories of we had a school on an island in the middle of Lake Victoria get safe water, and so the kids couldn't go to school until they could carry their own water up the mountain to drink for the day. So you had to be strong enough to do that. And so, seeing those kids hollering and celebrating and waving branches and getting all excited, and now the school's remodeled itself, and the community on the island has realized there's more water. Those are the stories, I guess, that are the impact. The coolest thing that's kind of happened is we've got a gentleman that we worked with for 10 years. He's from Senegal, lives in Dakar, Senegal now, and he's from Senegal and he lives in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And he's joined our ranks. I've known him for about 10 years. Well, I hired him about a year ago. And he's worked with the UN, he's worked with UNICEF and big groups and Red Cross, International Red Cross. And he says, Mark, he said, nobody really does work the way Waterstep does, with the tools, the training, and the way you go about working with people on the ground, not paying them. And he said, I want to be a part of this. And this is a gentleman that has kind of seen a global evidence of a lot of ways of doing humanitarian work. So I guess, you're like, what's the impact that you've made? If we can get the attention of somebody like that wants to work for Waterstep full time, that's evidence of an impact, that goes for me beyond data. Because with that, we get a relationship with this guy, Zachary, and makes a big difference.
Yeah. Yeah. I talk a lot about, like entrepreneurship has this buoyancy effect where when one person succeeds, it honestly lifts others up, and it raises the tide. And I see that a lot with the work that you are doing, where if one individual is affected, their family is affected, their community is affected. And to some degree, you can measure the gallons of water or the communities that you've served. But I think you really have no idea how huge of an impact Waterstep has had, because a few of these little stories, And I'm sure there's thousands more, and the effect of this one person having the clean water and having, the job or the schooling or whatever else, the ripple effect of that, of how that affected their family and their community for generations or for, years, even after you guys haven't been there, but you've been able to leave Waterstep there, I mean, it's truly incredible. And I think I'm going to sit and just think about, the amazingness of your work. And I'm just so grateful that you had the guts and the skill to go out and try something. You didn't know, you just tried it and you kept pursuing it. And I'm so grateful that nearly 30 years later, you guys are still out there,
Well,
even in the midst of how challenging it is.
right. Yeah, and it's funny, people are asking me all the time, questions about how you got here, and I had my favorite line. I was actually with lunch with a guy yesterday, and I don't know if you're familiar with the story of Ted Lasso, the series that's come out about the American soccer coach in Europe.
Yeah.
And he compared me to Ted Lasso, kind of entrepreneurship that, he really doesn't know a lot about what he's doing, but he's just doing it. And I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, I watched Ted Lasso, and that's what I thought. I think I'm a lot like Ted Lasso. So, I thought that was kind of fun.
You got the smile on your face and you're cheering them on.
That's right. That's right. So it was funny.
So I know you guys, obviously you've done so much work around the world, but you also are very passionate about your own community. There was the tornado last year
Yes.
in Kentucky and throughout, and you guys really stepped up to help out your neighbors.
Yep.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about that and what Waterstep was able to do?
I can, and tell me if I'm getting too long. It's a quick story. In Louisville, we had 6 water main breaks in succession about 8 or 9 years ago. It really messed the town up. A lot of upset folks, a lot of boil advisory for a long time. And the emergency management office showed up to Waterstep and they said, hey, nobody knows this, but we were 24 hours away from moving the residents of the downtown jail and the downtown detention center to a hotel. And that would have been really, really bad. And so they said, y'all do work around the world, so figure this out, help us come up with a plan. So one of the guys that is in leadership here, Curtis Daniels, came up with an idea, kind of bringing everything that we'd learned and known into what we call now the Water on Wheels cart. We never thought we could make a difference in the U.S. The U.S. has so many rules and regulations around water. It's just, why do that? But we began to learn that in disasters, that bottled water is the main thing that people serve up, or they bring in these huge, expensive, complex, energy hogging reverse osmosis systems on trailers. But there's a niche that's not been filled. So over time, we were able to get a partnership with the EPA and work on this cart, and it's become what it is now, and we're beginning to manufacture those. And so the state invited us to Western Kentucky with the tornadoes last year to set up a couple of water systems. One we set up at the public health department's area, and we provided safe water for showers, for drinking. We provided disinfectant. The cart's just a wonderful, sweet tool, very elegant. And then we have Marion, Kentucky now is in a disaster. Their levee broke. The military's hauling tens of thousands of gallons of water a day to Marion. Of course, it's not enough. They invited us to be on standby with our cart. Now the United States Ukrainian Foundation has bought 4 carts for us to put in Ukraine. We'll ship those out in August to medical centers in the war zone. So it's interesting the way, it's not like we planned this thing. We just respond to need and try to solve the problem. And so solving the problem has created an opportunity for us to help. We've been in Louisiana with the cart. We've been in other disasters. We have a disaster group based in Tennessee that has a cart, that they use. So that has kind of allowed us, if we can get, and Kentucky's working on giving us a check, if you will, to say Waterstep's WOW cart can be used in a disaster, and we kind of approve that. Then other states could follow, and that niche then could be filled in other states, so that ordinary people like you and me can learn how to operate the cart in a few hours. So anybody on a disaster team could find a way to provide safe water. The long answer to a short question, but again, I guess what I want to emphasize is the trail of the story that happens, that you just keep following along and connecting the dots, and you never know where you could end up. And so that's been a very powerful tool for us.
Yeah. So you've shared so many stories over this conversation, but I'm curious if you have any more, or if there's any particular community that has really had a profound impact on you.
Yeah. Going back, of course, to 1983, and, that little community called San Wabo in the middle of nowhere was very powerful. But I think less than the places are the people, and getting a chance to talk to some of these folks that are working hard, trying to eke out their own living. Have their own struggles, but their passion for water and health for the people that they care about is so strong that they're giving their lives to that. And being able to connect, we got a rock star, like I said, group of about 5 guys in Eastern Africa. We've got some neat folks in Senegal. We got this great guy in Sudan. He's just amazing. The relationships that we've gotten in Costa Rica, we really cut our teeth heavy there in the early years. The gentleman in the Philippines that, he's created a way to do clinics, with safe water and disinfectant. All those people are what come to mind when you say that. And the fact of being able to live a global life, if you will, but have the influence of all those cultures on me. We did when the I guess it was 2011 when the Pakistani floods happened real bad, and it was during that time that they were wanting to build a mosque where the Twin Towers fell, and just animosity was kind of crazy. We had a group of 3 Pakistani doctors. I mean, go figure, the Pakistans here are all in the medical field. It's kind of weird. You can go back, and they call them mom and dad. They came in the 60s and they said, hey, everybody's got to move here and be a doctor. So they did. Anyway, we had these Pakistani doctors come with tears in their eyes, and they said, we're concerned about our family with the worst flood that Pakistan's ever seen. Nobody will help us figure out how to help them. Will you do that? We said, of course. So we taught them the equipment. We had just developed our own equipment. We sent them over with 100 units. They just knocked it out of the park. And it was one of my favorite articles that I've kept over the years. Was a gentleman in the Courier Journal in Louisville said, I have never seen, writing about this story, I've never seen a group of Christians, Muslims, and Jews work together with such harmony. And so that has been a dream. I never imagined that water could be such an element of peace and hope in life. And that's, that's the people have brought peace and hope to my life in a way I never imagined.
Yeah. So I always end these interviews with a question about advice for young entrepreneurs. A lot of our listeners are entrepreneurs who are just starting out in their journey, or they have an idea, they're starting to take those next steps. What advice would you have for them as they begin to take the jump?
That's a great question. I have always surrounded my people with I have always surrounded myself with a great number of mentors and people of wide varying skill sets. Mm-hmm. The line that you find out, and sometimes it's too late. It's like, okay, we always surround ourselves with people just like us. And then all of a sudden we end up, and it's like, well, shucks, I'm kind of getting the same information or the same answers to the questions that I would answer. And so I've always tried to have a diverse group of people around me to challenge me. I learned a long time ago to try to take my ego out of it, because my ego is a problem, and those people have permission to check me with that. And so I don't have like one group of mentoring people, but I have several. I have a board of directors, of course. I have a group in a business network that I'm very close to, and then I have some close friends. But they all have carte blanche in my life to ask me the hard questions, to make sure I'm doing things for the right reason, and that influences the decisions I make every day on the job. And that I think that's one of the most critical things, is to find that group of people, to trust them, and then to be able to live with them, and see what happens.
That's great advice. I think whether you're an entrepreneur or not, you need to have those people.
Yeah.
Whatever your career dreams are, we can teach you to be both creative and innovative in how you solve business challenges. With 13 undergraduate and 4 graduate programs of study in Belmont's Massey College of Business, there's a program for you. Will you be our next success story? Find out more at belmont.edu/business.
Okay, well, before I let you go, can we wrap up with some rapid fire questions?
Right, it's the rapid fire time. Oh my God. Okay.
So, you know what? This first question, I feel like you're going to have a good answer to. If you were a spy, what would your code name be?
Ooh, a great question. I think I would like my spy name to be the Water Hogg. How about that?
Yes. Very good. What's your favorite country that you have visited?
Oh wow, that's great. I got to see a tremendous amount of the countryside when I was in Kenya, and just a lot of the people gathering tea leaves, and I mean, just amazing. And then I was able to be on the Serengeti too. That I got to see nature in a way that, and people, just in their daily lives in a way that I'd never really experienced before. It was amazing. Love it.
Name a book that everyone should read.
I love it. Okay, so if you're an entrepreneur, you got to read The Starfish and the Spider. That's what I really work to have this organization like, because a spider, if you cut off one of its legs, it can die, right? But a starfish, if you cut off a leg, it could create a new starfish with that leg and grow its leg back. So that's the way we've built our organization, is finding a way that if the head ever gets cut off, the work still keeps going.
Yeah, amazing. Do you have a favorite concert?
Favorite concert? So I'm kind of a jazz and blues kind of guy. So I got to see, this will date me pretty bad, I got to see Chuck Mangione when I was young, and that was great. A lot of people won't even know who that is. But I did, my wife took me for my birthday about 3 years ago to see Michael Douglas here in town, and that was phenomenal. So yeah, that's it. Yeah.
That's amazing. I have a story about him I'll tell you after this. Okay, something new happening in your life right now. Tell us something new.
Okay, I'm a great grandfather. My granddaughter had a baby about 2 months ago, and I'm trying to figure out what that looks like. And
Oh, congrats.
pretty big. So, and I look at myself in the mirror, and I'm, of course, older than I want to be, but now I'm like, do you realize that you're a great granddad? That's great. So, yeah, I'm trying to.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Are they in Louisville?
They're in Shelbyville, which is about 30 minutes away from us, and it's beautiful. Yeah, I love hanging out with my girls. So I have
so sweet.
Yeah, Magnolia is my new grandbaby's name.
That's a great name.
Yeah.
I love that. Yes. Oh, I love that. I have 2 girls, and they both have flower names.
Really?
So,
what are they?
Lillian, or Lily, and Iris.
That's
So
awesome.
we've got a theme here. So my husband's like, if we have another girl, what are we gonna do?
Nice.
Stick with the flower theme. But magnolia has such a great
Yeah.
connotation. It's just
Yeah, we
I
went
love that name.
bought a magnolia tree and planted it right outside the back door. So
Oh,
it's beautiful. Beautiful.
so great. Beautiful. Okay, so final question. How can listeners support you?
Oh wow, that's a great question. Send us money immediately. Push the button. Sorry. So I think the they got you. Okay, great. Are you pushing the button now? Did you push the button? Elizabeth, you start us off. Push the button.
I'm pushing it.
The
Oh, that tickled me.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, of course, we love donations. Building the network though is so important. A lot of people that know people, and it's happened dozens and dozens and dozens of times that need safe water or know a place that needs safe water, and we've had opportunities to make big impact, to use your word earlier, with folks that are like, I know this person and they're jazzed about this. They didn't know that they could do water. Can you help them? And it's like, yeah. And then all of a sudden this thing, emerges. And so that's important. Social media has a way for us to help us share those stories. We're trying to use our blog more and more to get stories out there. So, sharing those tidbits about Waterstep but just learning about water. I mean, the thing is, it's the greatest problem on the planet, access to safe water. But the cool thing is, we can do something about that. Oh my gosh!
Mm-hmm.
So let's figure out how to do that together.
Yeah. I will put the link in our show notes. So everybody listening, you can click the button.
That's right. That's right. I love it. Cool.
Thank you so much, Mark. Thank you for sharing your story and all the stories within the story. And it's just such an inspiration. And I mean, truly, you're making such a difference around the world. And I hope this inspires younger entrepreneurs to know, like, just get started and you really have no idea what will be the fruits of that, 20, 30 years down the road. But we're so grateful to have you be a part of the Belmont community. We're just so grateful for you.
Thanks for Belmont getting me started with this idea. It's great. And Elizabeth, I am confident that today you and I saved lives together just with this conversation. Mm-hmm. It will be a ripple effect that we might just only embrace and not see. So thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks for listening. What If is produced by Old Soul. For links and show notes, please visit belmontetp.com/whatif. Until next time, keep asking what if.